More joining me, J.D. Vance, CNN contributor and author of Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and culture in crisis. A. Scott Bolden, former chairman of the Washington, D.C. Democratic Party, and Alice Stewart, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist. A. Scott, to you first. If Trump issues a new ban, what changes do you think he could make to the current order to have a stronger legal argument and perhaps garner more public support?
Well, that's not clear. We'll have to see. We know that before the Ninth Circuit, his lawyers offered a compromise which said it would eliminate anyone or it would not cover anyone who had been to the United States already. But it's very unclear. A lot of moving parts because you could go en banc, they could go en banc to the Ninth Circuit. They could redraft that executive order. But I got to tell you, the state of Washington, as well as the Ninth Circuit and federal district court judges, are going to look harshly at it simply because of his political rhetoric. We'll have to see.
Now, Alice, I wonder if Trump is already too far down the road to walk this back and issue a new order. He's been tweeting adamantly about this from day one, insulting judges who've been part of looking at this order. His latest tweet on this issue was, "We'll see you in court." Do you think this is heading all the way to the Supreme Court?
It will be interesting to see what he actually does do, but it seems as though the more prudent thing to do would be to sharpen up the pen and issue another executive order with a little bit, using a little bit more specifics with regard to the execution of it. And clearly the law is on his side. If you look at U.S. Code 1182, the president does have the right to suspend entry of aliens into this country that they deem to be detrimental to the United States. So he has that law on his side. But the questions we saw coming out of the three-judge panel dealt more specifically with why these 7 countries. What is it about these 7 countries that were of concern? And we all know that these were countries that were identified under the Obama administration as countries of concern. And the vetting procedures out of these countries are an area that need to be improved based on our security experts. And those are things they just need to flesh out. Now that we have Jeff Sessions in as his position, I think we'll have a little bit better legal team moving forward. And that should make a big difference in executing a more better suited executive order moving forward than the last one.
Alice, I want to ask you real quick, though, about what you said, because you said that it's quite obvious that more vetting needs to be done. What specifically isn't working right now?
Well, based on, we heard General Kelly when he spoke to the committee, he said these 7 countries don't work well with the United States and don't have the proper procedures in place, the policing.
But we haven't seen any terrorist attacks by anybody from those countries.
Exactly.
Well, right. Europe has. People from these 7 countries have committed terrorist acts throughout Europe, and that is an important distinction. While they haven't done it here, thank goodness, they have. So I trust implicitly the officials during the Obama administration that named these countries and the ones that continue to identify these countries now. So that's an important distinction to make. And Kelly, Secretary Kelly made it quite clear that the policing of the vetting process out of these countries is not up to par with what we want and what we need, and they do want to continue keeping a closer look on it moving forward.
Guys, I want to pivot to these immigration raids. I know there's more to say on that travel ban. That has been dissected, the ideas behind it, the potential implications of it, but we're starting to see another consequence of the executive order on immigration, according to some who are saying these ICE raids are another example of what the Trump administration said it was going to do actually coming to fruition. JD, I want you to listen to what Trump said about his plans to deport undocumented immigrants. This was back when he was campaigning. We'll talk on the other side.
Are you going to have a massive deportation force?
You're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely, very inexpensively.
Are they going to be ripped out of their homes?
Can I tell you? They're going back where they came. If they came from a certain country, they're going to be brought back to that country. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, they can come back, but they have to come back legally. They can come back, but they have to.
So are we essentially seeing what Mr. Trump described then as a candidate happening now, JD?
Well, one of the things we obviously noticed on the campaign trail is that Trump would say one thing 1 week, and then 3 or 4 weeks later he would actually amend his prior statement. And so if you look at what the administration officials have said from Trump and Kelly on down, the real priority for immigration enforcement is on those folks who have not just come to the country illegally, but also pose some additional safety risk. And so what I find so fascinating about some of the reporting about what's going on with these immigration raids is that they actually aren't in compliance with some of the things that the Trump administration has said that it wants to do. So either those priorities are not accurately stated by the administration, or there's something about the reporting that isn't quite right. And if you listen to Kelly, his argument is fundamentally, Secretary of DHS General Kelly, his argument is that these immigration raids were already planned, but they were actually just implemented during the Trump administration.
And Scott, ICE officials have said just that these actions, one, are routine, and two, have been in the planning stages really for weeks since prior to the Trump administration taking office, and that it was in fact Obama when he was in the White House who initiated this effort. Is there any reason to think that these raids wouldn't be happening if someone else were in the White House?
Well, it's not clear, but let me say this. What we do know about these raids are they're high-profile, high-visibility raids. I'm a former prosecutor. When we did sweeps around New York City for drug dealers, it's the same difference. You show force, you instill fear in immigration communities. Donald Trump and his administration know that the courts are going to be a big buffer on this. And so with the existing laws, it's clear to me in these targeted cities that not only are they showing a force, putting more resources behind it in a very public way, instilling fear, and going to remove illegal immigrants, not just illegal felons who are immigrants. Because the difference between Obama's charges and what Trump is doing right now is that his ICE efforts were targeted towards illegal felons and removing them from the country. Here, I can tell you, any sweep or any raid may target illegal felons, but they're going to target other people who are here illegally, kids, families, individuals, women along of the same ilk, because they're imperfect, because it's unclear what the actual policy is. What's clear is that Donald Trump wants a sweeping raid and all illegals out of the country, and under the definition of ICE, if they're here illegally, they're criminals.
I want to give you a little bit of information that we did get from ICE. This was on the raids that happened in the Los Angeles area in the last few days. 160 people were arrested in that area. And to both your points, JD and Scott, a lot of the people who were arrested apparently did have criminal and violent histories. In fact, they say 95%, or excuse me, 150 of the 160 people who were arrested in this raid had some violent past, including child sex crimes, weapons charges, and assault. So those seem to be in alignment with the Obama priorities to remove that particular group of undocumented immigrants who are in the U.S. But Alice, there is a story that's generated a lot of fury over the past week, and that's the story of the mother in Arizona who was deported. She was brought here when she was a teenager. She checked in annually with the immigration officials with ICE. She had never committed a violent crime. We do know she had a felony record for impersonation. She had used a fake Social Security number at one point. But is that the kind of person, again, a non-violent, undocumented immigrant with a family here in the U.S., that ICE needs to target?
Not when we have the magnitude of people like we had in the raid that was just executed, when we have felons and convicted felons that ICE focused on. But look, she was here illegally.
Why do you think she was pulled in then, now?
Well, obviously there's a stricter enforcement on illegal immigration, and at the end of the day, she was here illegally. She's had a lifetime to get right with the law, and she wasn't. It's sad and it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, we are certainly a nation of immigrants. We are also a nation of laws, and if it hasn't been enforced in the past, clearly the new president is going to make sure that our immigration laws that we have on the books will be enforced moving forward.
We'll have to leave it there. Alice Stewart, A. Scott Bolden, and J.D. Vance, our thanks to all of you. Still ahead here in the newsroom. Right. emotions boiling over at Republican town halls and cities all across the U.S. But is this anger just the tip of the iceberg? We'll take you live to Florida, where constituents had some tough questions for their congressman there. And then later, the president's national security advisor appears to be in hot water over concerns he may have brought up Russian sanctions when he and Moscow's ambassador to the U.S. spoke before Trump took office. How the president is reacting, we'll have more on that story as we continue here in the CNN newsroom.